Hippocrates, the father of medicine, had said, "Let thy food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food."
Approximate principles make a healthy, nutritious diet. So the carbohydrates, the proteins, the fat, the vitamins and minerals, all
Nutritionists and dietitians and nutrition experts, both are considered to be healthcare professionals.
refrigeration, there was no cold storage. So what you got from the tree was on your plate. What you did from the land was used. There was no
Good day to all. A healthy body translates to a healthy mind. Wishing all the viewers a happy National Nutrition Week. This is Jhoshika from Grade 9, here to take you through the Expert Talk series on nutrition and health. Nutrition is at the heart of our everyday lives. A well-balanced, nutritious diet is essential to keep this cycle in check. Every year, from September 1st to September 7th, the National Nutrition Week is observed to create public awareness to the vital indicators of the citizens' well-being and prosperity. To educate people about this fundamental phenomenon, the Food and Nutrition Board of the Government of India's Ministry of Women and Child Development conducts this week-long annual celebration of National Nutrition Week. Today, we are here to gather first-hand information about maintaining diet charts and meal plans from Dr. Ashwath from KMCH. Dr. D. Ashwath completed his undergraduation from JIPMA Pondicherry in 1991. Then he did his MD and DCH programs in pediatrics from King Edward Memorial Hospital, Bombay during 92-95. During his residency, he received special training in genetics and neonatal intensive care in one of Asia's largest NICUs. His particular interests are genetics, neonatology, and respiratory diseases. He is an active member of local pediatrics chapter and past secretary of Coimbatore chapter of IAP. He was awarded the Best Resident Award in the year 1995 and the Diplomate of the National Board in 1996. Sir joined the Kovai Medical Center and Hospital in 1995 as registrar in pediatrics and then promoted as consultant in pediatrics. Dr. Ashwath was an instructor at National PALS. He also conducts PALS courses for the pediatricians at various cities in India. Being an eminent speaker, Doctor had also given his valuable talk shows at various IMA, CMES, and state pediatric conferences. Dr. Ashwath is also the member of the editorial board of IAP chapter of Continuing Medical Education. Welcome to the show, sir, on the NGP School's Expert Talk series.
my place.
So, can I proceed with a few questions?
Please.
The Greek physician Hippocrates, the father of medicine, had said, "Let thy food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food." Hippocrates realized that food impacts a person's health, body, and mind. And until a few decades back, people understood and realized that food was a source of health and prevents illness. So why have things changed in the recent years, sir?
The only thing permanent in life is change. So thanks for a very insightful question, Jhoshika. It's a pleasure for me to be here and interact with the wider audience. And it's very, very heartening to know that NGP School has taken initiative in sensitizing people about the vital aspects of nutrition, especially child nutrition. I'm not a nutritionist or a dietitian. Yes, as you said, after 30 years of experience in pediatrics, we have seen seminal changes in the way people approach food. So it is not just Hippocrates, even our ancient seers in Tamil the Greek scholars and poets are continuously extol the values of the virtues of a balanced diet. Unave marundu, marunde unavu. This is something which we find across very often in the ancient Tamil texts. And they also said, "Virundu marundu, moonu naalukku mela ovadu." So whether you feast or whether you fast, anything in excess is not going to be good. So people initially started eating just to survive. When human beings evolved out of Homo sapiens, out of the Neanderthals, at that time, the need for food was only to survive. Formal agriculture, that is, utilization of lands for the purposes of growing crops, is only 30,000 years old. So the Sumerian civilization, the Assyrian civilization started formalize agriculture as a way of producing food crops. Then food became a commodity which could be traded. And subsequently, we realized that a nutritious diet was needed for health. And then further and further, we started evolving into different types of foods. Now, when people started having ill consequences of poor quality of diet, we started realizing that diet is not just necessary for survival, it's also needed for the optimal health. And then came the concepts of researchers, and people start going into the diet and realize that diet is not a homogeneous entity. We have parts of carbohydrates, we have the proteins, we have the fats, we have the vitamins, and we have the minerals. So after a while, food started becoming something we could trade it and became an industry commodity. Subsequently, food started becoming more refined because people wanted choice, people wanted taste. Then people start experimenting with ways the way the meat could be processed, and that's how the science of food evolved. Over a period of time, somewhere along this pathway, we seem to have lost our way, so much so that taste, presentation, appealability, palatability, and intense gratification that one gets from eating tasty food becomes more important than the primary reason for which food was consumed, which is to maintain a good health. Clear?
Yes.
So once people have moved away from eating food as a source of nutrition to stay alive, and once food was taken care of, basic quantity of food could be provided for most people of the planet, people started experimenting and saying, let's make this more tasty, let's make this more attractive, let's make this more appealing, appetizing. So once people started falling prey to the sensory aspects of food rather than the nutritive aspects of food, we seem to have started eating for pleasure rather than for health. And anything which is done for pleasure will have its consequences. That is how I see food evolve.
Thank you, sir. That was a great deal of information. Sir, I've read that the three keys to optimal nutrition are balance, quality, and timing. Could you please explain these aspects, sir?
So I said in the previous answer, we just had a peek into that. So when we look at food as a homogeneous entity, when you split into it, we actually come across like you have 5 fingers in a hand. Most doctors, most medical professions, we approach diet in the same way. So we have carbohydrates, we have proteins, we have fats, we have vitamins, and we have the minerals. Just like 5 fingers make a hand, 5 proximate principles make a healthy, nutritious diet. So the carbohydrates, the proteins, the fat, the vitamins and minerals all need to be provided in appropriate ratio and the appropriate quantity. So we are talking about 2 things. They need to be present and they need to be present in a certain ratio. If you look at the average Indian diet, nearly 50% of all your energy intake would come from carbohydrates. It's highly recommended that the next 30% comes from fat. And about 10 to 20% of your calories will be provided by fats and proteins. Protein is basically a substance which the body uses for repairing itself and for building the body. So it will be not very nice to utilize proteins for providing calories. So proteins are taken as bodybuilding foods. So only 20% of your total caloric intake should be provided by proteins. 50 grams, 30% fat, 20% comes from protein. And then to maintain optimal health, people realize that we need certain substances which are present in very trace amounts, very small amounts. So they are called micronutrients because they are not needed in huge chunks. So these micronutrients are basically the vitamins. So you have the fat-soluble vitamins, we have the water-soluble vitamins, and then we have minerals. We have calcium, we have phosphorus, we have iron, zinc. So all of these taken together will provide what is called as a balanced diet. The next question you had raised was about the quality of the diet. So when we talk about the quality of diet, again, people have been very sensitive to the fact that we seem to have lost the plot somewhere. We seem to be eating for pleasure or no. We seem to be eating for sense gratification rather than for the health aspect of nutrition. Therefore, we constantly keep talking about what we call the
health pyramid or the healthy food pyramid. So the healthy pyramid, the base, as you know, the pyramid strength is the base. So what is the food that we are very comfortable to provide as much as possible? Fruits and veggies. Fruits and vegetables should occupy nearly 50% of your diet. If it's a fresh fruit, if it's a raw fruit, if it's seasonally available, if it's a locally produced food, all the more better. So fruits and vegetables, we don't put a peak on the amount. You can eat as much as you want. Next we come to what we call the grains and the legumes. The grains and legumes will provide you carbohydrates and protein. Correct?
Yes.
And then we come to the meat. Meat is probably less available because of the expense aspect and because of certain social norms, certain cultural norms. There are lots of races which do not believe in the non-vegetarian diet. And then on top of that comes the milk and the dairy products like your butter, ghee, cheese, vanaspati, things like that. And then you have at the apex sugar, salt, correct? And substances which are extremely calorie rich, like artificially prepared juices, ice creams, stuff like that. The yummy stuff is actually at the tip of the pyramid. That is a substance which we advise either not to take at all, if possible, or to take in as less a quantity as possible. So basically, the healthy pyramid, the base rests on fruits, vegetables, then you have cereals, legumes, then you have the grains, then you have non-vegetarian food, the dairy products, and at the apex or your high-calorie, so-called junk food. Correct? So that is about the quality of the diet. The third aspect that you talked about was the timing aspect. So the timing aspect says, depending on what quality of life you have, what lifestyle you pursue, the quality of the diet, the calories have to match your nutritional needs. So if you look at the traditional Indian diet and most Western diets, it's very, very breakfast intensive. Breakfast really sets the tone for the day. As a student, Jhoshika, you should know that you're most active, most energetic when you enter the classroom for a class. So you need your brains buzzing, your antennae should be out, you should be concentrated on the lessons. And as the day progresses, you feel you are tiring out a bit, you're not able to concentrate as well. Physically, emotionally, you are drained. Correct? So it's optimal nutrition. Maybe 30 to 40% of the calories of a day should be provided by breakfast. You should have a lighter lunch and you could have a family dinner which takes care of the rest. Traditional South Indian meals are very lunch intensive. Most of the Western diets are very breakfast intensive. We in South India have tendency to have a heavy lunch and a light breakfast and a dinner. The Western diet has a very heavy breakfast, has a functional lunch, and dinner is more of a social phenomenon where the family meets at the dinner table, more for exchange of ideas, and dinner, the nutritional aspect is far less significant than in the Indian context. So that's as far as the timing is concerned. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, sir. So speaking of breakfast, sir, most teens have a strong liking for dressing food or Swiggy and Zomato are household names now. What's your take on this, sir? It would be unreasonable to say stop the temptation because it's next to impossible. What's your suggestion here, sir?
See, Swiggy and Zomato are not bad in themselves. See, they are only purveyors. It is, if you can pardon me using the example, if you're a 20-year-old, if you're a 25-year-old, access to tobacco, access to fun, access to alcohol, access to smoke, access to injurious substances is available. The law provides access to these things with certain restrictions. But it's up to you as an individual to not choose the bad path and choose a good path instead. So at 18 years plus, we believe that you have sufficiently evolved, you've been sufficiently told and sensitized about the good effects and bad effects of decisions that you take. So nothing bad in the market is calling you to come and take it. It is available. It's up to you as an individual to choose or not to choose. You could choose to walk away. You could choose to walk towards. So that choice is provided to you. Similarly, it's not correct to blame Swiggy or Zomato. They exist there because they are service providers. They don't come and tell you, thou shalt eat an unhealthy breakfast. You can choose to have 3 idlis, you can have kamanku, You can have ragi cool through Swiggy and Zomato delivery at your kids. In fact, in India, in South India, there are startups which are providing pare soda along with kacha venayam and mulaga for breakfast. So Swiggy and Zomato can give you what you want. So the choice rests with the individual. It's not with the service provider. Yes, this is the point we talked about. There are definitely disturbing trends in the sense people want fast food. They do not have the time to wait for the process. Over a period of time, not just with respect to nutrition, in many things, getting to the ends becomes more important. Getting to the ends fast becomes more important rather than the process. So people who don't have patience with the process do not have the time or the luxury of time to wait for an idli or the batter to be put into the oven, for the oven to heat it, and for idli to be served hot. So the process of making idli, the process of making pongal, upma, the traditional breakfast like dosa and whatever, is effort intense. So if people don't have time or they have not structured their day very well, their excuse would be is, I'm in a rush. I need food immediately. I don't have the time or the patience to go and sit through all this. So if you can choose a healthy breakfast provided by a service provider, you still have a choice of idli, dosa, pongal, upma, suji, kira, poha, kavil, puri, panesu. There are so many healthy alternatives to breakfast which can be provided by these service providers that you talked about. So it is not that I need food to be prepared and given to me, but it needs to be unhealthy. You can still have a healthy choice. And as I said initially, lunch becomes functional if you are stressed for time, if you're pressed for time, if lunch becomes shortened, if you don't have the luxury of a long lunch interval like most professionals, it is better to have a healthy start to the day with a good breakfast rather than relying on a lunch, which may or may not be healthy. So the breakfast sets the tone. The breakfast should be optimal and it should be sufficiently carbohydrate, fat, and protein balance for you to get at least 40 to 50% of your day's requirement provided by breakfast.
Yes, sir. So, speaking of breakfast, some of us happen to complain, saying that I don't have time to have a breakfast, be it adult or a youngster, especially on days when we know we need lots of energy. What do you recommend for a quick breakfast on the go, sir?
I think there is, in my opinion, nothing beats a traditional Indian breakfast. So if you look at the Indian breakfast, what is it that we normally have for breakfast? Idli, pongal, upma, goduma upma. We have dosa. So, and you have a bit of oil on the side. You have a chutney. You have a sambar. So that sambar provides you some dal. It provides some water. It gives you some proteins. If you look at all these diets that I have taken you, they are optimally balanced with respect to carbohydrate and protein. So when you add oil or ghee, that provides the fat. When you have chutney, some vegetables come inside there. So when you have vegetables, when you have a tomato chutney, it is made out of fresh tomato. Correct? So you get your fiber, the oil provides the ghee or the oil provides you the fat. And the ulundu and the agasi mama that goes into the making of the carbohydrate protein mix, which we popularize as idli dosa, it's only the form. You have carbohydrate protein, you have fat, you have vitamins and minerals, and you have fruits and vegetables to accompany that. So, in my opinion, nothing beats a traditional Indian breakfast in providing the right start, the healthy start to our day. Provided we have adequate balance of all this. If you have a glass of milk, that also provides you calcium. It also contains carbohydrates, proteins. If you have an omelette or if you have a boiled egg, that's an excellent source of protein. Each egg provides you 60 calories of energy and 6 grams of very good quality protein. So if you have a glass of fruit juice, or if you can have a fruit which is even better than a glass of fruit juice, that provides you minerals, water, and lots of potassium and lots of vitamin C as well. So there is absolutely no excuse for saying, I choose an unhealthy breakfast because I'm in a rush. Correct?
Yes. Sir, I've heard of people going for nutritional supplements available in the market. Is it safe, and what's your thoughts on such use of dietary supplements to aid nutrition?
That's a very loaded question, Jhoshika, because as we said, not all people have access to quality nutrition. If you actually look at it, Facts. 2 packets of biscuit will cost less than 2 rupees. So we've just been extolling the virtues of idli and dosa. An average plate of idli in a decent quality hotel would be 30 to 40 rupees. Whereas for the same 30 to 40, you could buy a soft bread and 2 packets of biscuit, which are crunchy, munchy, which are very crisp, which are very sweet, and which provide a lot of pleasure. Hardly any child gets as much pleasure from eating idlis as from munching a biscuit or a toffee or what. That's a common experience. I've gone through it, you've gone through it. We all accept that this is a tasty alternative. The question here is it the healthier alternative? Unfortunately, things which are very nice to the palate and tongue are not particularly safe if the correct amount is exceeded, or they are not the greatest alternatives available. So, when you talk about diet, we have huge inequalities in diet. So, not everyone is privileged to have this sort of breakfast that you and I would have. So, if I'm going to have idli and I do not have ghee or butter or cheese, I'm fat and bread. If I don't access to egg because of social practices or because an egg is expensive, I start having a food which takes care of probably my basic needs, but which don't provide my subtle needs. So when we talked about the 5 fingers of the hand, you remember the last 2 fingers? The vitamins and the minerals. A growing girl child like you needs a lot more calcium. You need a lot more vitamin D. You need a lot more iron than probably even I as an adult may need. An adult male's need is less than an adolescent girl's need with respect to certain nutrients. Correct? So if you're living below the poverty line, if you don't have access to good quality nutrition, and I say you need 60 milligrams of iron and 1000 units of vitamin D a day, and you need to go in the sun and play in the sun for 1.5 hours a day to get that vitamin D. You tell me practically, is it possible for a child of your age to go out and sun and play 1.5 hours every day to get your vitamin D? Obviously not. Where does vitamin D come from? It comes from fish, it comes from salmon, it comes from egg yellow, it comes from cream, cheese, butter. And the knowledge, my father or mother cannot afford all these high calorie, high nutrition substances. So where do I get my vitamin? Let us assume for the purposes of argument that I'm a pure vegetarian. I need 60 milligrams of iron in my diet. Where does iron come from? Mutton, liver, fish, chicken. What are the vegetarian sources of iron? Keela, greens, green leafy vegetables, which I hate. Jaggery, which my mother does not prepare. She prefers to use white sugar because that's what is available in the ration shop. So where do I get my 60 milligrams of iron? I'm a vegetarian, I don't like keela, and my mother doesn't use jaggery in cooking. And things like dates and figs are too esoteric, they're too expensive. So where do I get my iron from? So with respect to certain nutrients, like essential fatty acids, vitamin D, calorie, calcium, and iron, these are certain supplements which are appropriate for a child who is vulnerable to deficiencies of this. That is why you find that a pregnant woman is always supplemented with iron and folic acid. In fact, the Government of India, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, has a weekly program whereas adolescent children are given iron and folic acid supplements on a weekly basis. This is part of the National Anemia Control Program. We also give you deworming medicines to make sure there are no worms in the intestine which can cause iron deficiency. So adolescent children, adolescent girls especially, pregnant women, children less than 5 years of age are extremely vulnerable to vitamin, calorie and protein insufficiency because they are going through critical periods when they need a lot of balanced nutrition. So I'm just giving you some examples where health authorities actively promote nutritional supplementations. If you look at the recent fads of taking high doses of zinc, calcium, vitamins, taking high doses of mega doses of omega-3 fatty acids because XYZ put it in the WhatsApp group saying, you take these things, you will not get COVID. If you get COVID, your COVID will be mild. You keep knocking off zinc and vitamin D without taking doctor's advice. That is an actively discouraged practice. as we often say in Tamil, Adavukku Meerina Amudum Nanisham. So if you keep taking vitamin D, calcium, and zinc supplements without doctor's advice or without any form of supervision, these so-called vitamins can even prove very health injurious. So we do not issue blanket statements saying nutritional supplements are bad. We also do not encourage the use of unregulated vitamin supplementations without medical supervision or a dietitian's advice.
Yes, sir. So, speaking of dietitians, sir, I have a question for you. We know that both nutritionists and dietitians are nutrition experts. Both are considered to be healthcare professionals, but the terms can't be interchanged. So, sir, what is the difference, or is there any demarcation between the two fields?
Again, that's a very interesting question because when people don't have access to quality healthcare information, they invariably go to the internet, they Google, right? And unfortunately, because the internet is very loosely regulated, lots of people are able to host their own websites. So lots of people who have read books on nutrition, athletes, they have their own innate knowledge and they are able to start a YouTube channel or they are able to write a blog where they become self-proclaimed nutrition gurus. So they start dispelling information. And nutrition is a very broad, it's a very poorly governed term. When you say dietitian, we are talking about a person who's a healthcare professional who's undergone rigorous training in the field of nutrition. They have a qualification, they have undergone a basic course or probably an advanced course. So you have nutrition care for ill people, you have nutrition for healthy people, then you have nutrition for geriatrics, nutrition for pediatrics, you have sports nutritionists, you have nutritionists for people with special healthcare needs like people with metabolic disorders or diabetes. So nutritionist is a much, much higher level, whereas a dietitian is a person who's been formally educated and qualified to do all that a nutritionist can do, but with legal implications. I cannot call myself a dietitian if I don't undergo a certain amount of training. I can tell you basic principles of healthy life, but just because I'm giving you health advice, that doesn't make me a doctor. Similarly, anybody who gives you good quality advice on nutrition, who knows certain amounts of facts and can discuss certain bits about nutrition, is justified in calling himself a nutritionist, but by no means is that person a dietitian. A dietitian is a person who can write out a therapeutic diet, and like a doctor can write a prescription. Right? So a dietitian is more formally trained, more formally educated, and there are implications to what a dietitian does. Whereas a nutritionist is very poorly regulated by law. Anybody can give you advice on nutrition, but that doesn't make you a dietitian. A dietitian is a person who is formally trained, who is highly qualified, who needs to undergo certain amounts of continuing medical education to make sure that the dietary advice he gives continues to be in tandem with the current guidelines. So it would be nutritionist here and a dietitian here. We cannot equate.
Okay, sir. So it just struck my mind, sir. I happened to correct some diet charts, and one of them is a kid's diet chart. It goes like 30 grams protein, 15 grams of iron, 30 grams fat, 600 milligram of calcium, 1000 milligrams of sodium, 250 grams of carbs equals 1690 calories per day. This has to be consumed of a kid of say 7 to 8 years old to stay fit. How can an average Indian keep following up such diet charts for anyone in the family, that too in this fast-moving age?
Okay, basically the entire diet advice, whatever we've been discussed, whatever has been discussed over the past so many minutes, it all boils down to this. This is what we call applied nutrition. So far, whatever we've been talking about is in the realms of theory. Correct? Ultimately, nutrition has no meaning except the food on the plate in front of you. So again, going back to your common sense diet. Your tata, my tata, your party, my party. They were not nutritionists. They were not dietitians. They were not traditionalists. Now today in the modern world, it's very easy to frown upon on anything that is traditional because it's considered old-fashioned, it's considered passé, it's considered very unhip. if I can use the word. So people want more variety, people want more taste, people want more choices, people want diversity, and people want more variety in presentation because of food. How is food presented? How is food planned? So when we come to this again and again, something has to take a backseat. So unfortunately, when food is consumed for the aesthetics, or when food is consumed for the taste alone, when food is judged by its appeal to the taste buds rather than what is doing to the body, nutrition takes a backseat. So to keep it simple, we need to go back to 50 years ago when people were having diet that was locally produced, locally available, seasonal. Remember, there was no frigidaire, there was no refrigeration, there was no cold storage. So what you got from the tree was on your plate. What you tilled from the land was used. There was no organic farming as a special niche, cliched part that was the norm. And whatever was harvested was consumed without too much of storage. So today we talk about fresh foods, we talk about organic farms, we talk about free ranges. 60 years, 70 years ago, this was the norm. And people stayed very healthy because there was freshness, there was genuineness, and everything was prepared according to local availability. Now we have imported stuff coming from China. We have frozen food that was probably plucked from the tree 3 months ago. It looks fresh when it's on the plate, but it's hardly fresh. Therefore, eat locally available food, eat local produce, eat fresh, eat raw as much as is possible, avoid processed food. When you look at the traditional diet, we are not about South Indian. If you look at chapati paratha, if you look at your chapati with dal, if you look at your chapati with meat kurma or fish curry or whatever, if you accompany it with milk, if you cut down it off with some curd or buttermilk, which gives you a lot of probiotics, when you take lots of fruits and vegetables, which give you the fiber, when you take a diet which is made up of idli, rice, godume, which is wheat, or you have ragi or samba or whatever, you look at the most South Indian basic diet will roughly give you 50% of your total calories from carbohydrates, and 30% will come from fats, and 20% will come from proteins. The quantity of food that an individual needs to take varies. Obviously, a 2-year-old child and a 20-year-old youth cannot have the same amount, but the proportionality of the food remains the same. So, if you have a family pot diet, and the family pot diet roughly sticks to these principles, if you have a balanced diet with unlimited fruits and vegetables, followed by cereals, grains, and legumes, followed by meat, followed by dairy products, with an occasional sweet or a salty snack or a sugary snack or a payasam or a French fry or a occasional ice cream or a cake to celebrate a special occasion, the mom has got it right. So it's very, very difficult for the arm army, for the average person to go through these dietary charts that you said, correct? But if you follow the traditional recipe of the Indian family, it is very, very unlikely you go wrong. Having said that, this traditional diet, this balanced diet we said, cannot either be acceptable or may not be affordable for many families. If that was so, wherever there are lacunae in the diet, that has to be supplemented. That is where the other question that you asked, do healthy children need supplements? Not all healthy children need supplements, but children at vulnerable ages, children who belong to certain vulnerable segments of the society, they definitely need to be supplemented. And it is very important that the average person keeps looking back at their family diet to see whether they are getting it right. We equate weight with health. That is very, very unfortunate because a heavy person or a person who's got an appropriate weight or age is not necessarily a health person. A person who is undernourished and a person who is overnourished are equally unhealthy. That is why we have the so-called obesity epidemic in the globe. So we call it globesity. Right? The whole world is becoming fat. India especially, because we are a country of extremes. We have abject poverty, we have extremely affluent people, and as a whole, the society is moving towards high energy, high salt, unhealthy diet, leading to a next pandemic of overnutrition, rather than undernutrition. The extremes are always bad. Be it hot, be it cold, be it money. Correct? Too little money, too much money. Both are problems. Same way, too little nutrition which is way beyond your needs, both are equally unhealthy. So the middle path is where we need to be. Correct? So the average person doesn't actually need to calculate carbohydrate, protein, fats, and minerals the way we say. That is something a healthcare professional will use. If you stick to the traditional diet, eat from the family diet, stick to the principles that I've outlined, you're very unlikely to go wrong. Correct?
Yes, sir. Sir, the point about traditional food, actually I really like the point, sir, and it was very informative, sir. So now, viewers, it's our turn to promote National Nutrition Week. Keep saying to yourself and also by the word of mouth, spread the message about aaj se toda kam, say no to white sugar. Plan to try some nutritional recipes by organizing a healthy recipe contest in your family or in your community, in your workplace or even in your institution. Also, don't forget to get involved and see if you can implement some lifelong improvements in your diet as suggested by Dr. Ashwath. Thank you for watching. Happy eating!